how realistic is it that we are going to avoid this fiscal cliff? Is there going to be a deal that's hatched before the end of the year?
You know, Ryan, I think there's about an 80% chance that we will avoid the fiscal cliff, that, middle-class Virginians won't see their tax rates go up, that we'll avoid these kind of crazy across-the-board sequestration cuts. I'm not as optimistic. I'd probably put it about 50-50 whether it's a big enough deal and will lead to the kind of full $4 trillion in deficit reduction we need over the next 10 years. My hope is we don't kick the can because even if the president gets the rate increases, which I support for those of us at the top, that's not enough revenue to get where we need to go in terms of a long haul over 10 years. Even if we try to mitigate, some of the additional defense cuts, and we're going to have to do more in defense than what the Pentagon has offered. And I know there are folks, and I want to make sure Medicare and Social Security are protected, but the idea that, we can't start phasing in some changes in those just as a refusal to recognize the basic math around these programs. Not because they're not good programs, but because with an aging population, thank goodness we're all growing a lot older, living a lot longer, it means the math doesn't work anymore. When I was a kid, there were 16 people working for every one person on Medicare and Social Security. Today, because we live longer, there are only 3 people working, paying in taxes for every person on Social Security and Medicare. That will go down to 2 people within the next 10 years. So we've got to realize if we don't start phasing in some changes on both what we pay in and what we take out and how we spend, those programs are going to go bankrupt. So the sooner we start some of those reforms as well, the better.
Do you think that the average American, the average Virginian understands that end of the equation, that kind of the little things, not to say that any of this is little, but the little things that Republicans and Democrats are fighting about are just a drop in the bucket in the overall big picture? Do you think people grasp how serious the situation is?
Well, I don't, Ryan, because what they hear more often than not are the kind of political talking points back and forth. The thing that, and again, I'm kind of obsessed about this, and as you know, but I think it would be really helpful in a nonpartisan, just lay out the facts way to the American public. As I travel the state, I go through a presentation trying to explain how we got here, how we raise our money, how we spend our money. And I found with every crowd I've talked to of Virginians, I get about 90% of them agreeing with at least the framework of a solution. But what we don't do is we don't explain, hey, Medicare, Social Security, great programs. We don't want to cut them per se, but the math just doesn't work because we're living a lot longer. The revenues, nobody's talking about even going fully back to the Clinton tax cut eras, but we took $4.5 trillion with the Bush tax cuts out of the revenues. We got to put about a third of those back in if we're going to try to get back to deficit neutrality. The spending side, we've done a lot of good things over the last decade, but we can't continue to put things like the war in Iraq and Afghanistan purely on the credit card. We've got to start paying and finding smarter ways on where we spend our dollars, and in some of those means cutting back on spending. The thing that have been most disappointed in is that I think Americans are smart. I think they will do what's in the country's best interest if we could turn this debate from Republicans versus Democrats and who won the election and who didn't into the moral equivalent of kind of a war bond campaign where we say, okay, the enemy's this $16 trillion debt. Every American's going to have to do their part in a small way. And those who do more, we're not going to criticize them. We're going to actually say they're even better patriots. And I think we could change the whole frame of this debate. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet.
I'm sure that you would agree that the Republicans need to have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the revenue side of things. But do you think that the White House has come far enough with substantive examples of spending cuts? Do you think that they've put enough on the table right now? I
think that the White House has come out specifically on the revenues, and they've come out with some specificity on the spending cuts. I think what the White House is looking for is the Republicans to say, all right, show us your specific changes to Medicare. Show us your specific changes to some of these entitlement programs. And the challenge is that nobody wants to get specific because everybody's for entitlement reform or tax reform until you get to the specifics. I took a lot of arrows for my Gang of Six plan. I'd welcome both sides to go back to that plan. I've been attacked by both the left and the right. Let's take some of those ideas. But I do think part of this means that the actual specifics will probably be decided by the president and the speaker in that kind of one-on-one negotiation. If they could both kind of tune down some of the rhetoric in the meantime, that might be helpful as well. But I'd also say the sooner we get this done, the better. This is the most important shopping season of the year, the Christmas season, and that's important not just for retailers, but it's a big driver of our national economy, the retail sector. You know, the sooner we can get this cleared up, cleaned up, the sooner confidence will come back. You know, this economy, I think, is ready and poised to move ahead positively. And the single biggest thing to create job growth, my personal belief, is to do a real $4 trillion debt deal. That will get money off the sidelines back invested in America. And that means both sides are going to have to give.
So, I mean, obviously you've got some pretty good ideas here, but it doesn't appear that your ideas are getting on anyone's radar in terms of as you mentioned, it might be one of these deals that's hashed out between the speaker and the president one-on-one. I mean, do you have confidence that your majority leader is an active participant in this discussion? I mean, is there any talk amongst your conference that maybe a new voice might help move these discussions in a different direction and maybe just kind of shake things up a little bit?
Well, I think, Ryan, you know, there's an awful lot of us in both parties who've tried to put forward good ideas. We've all kind of stood down at this point as we allow the president and the speaker of the room to negotiate. I tell you, I'd be happy to be the broker in between these guys, or I wish I was in the room. But I've been involved in a lot of negotiations as a business guy, as a former governor. I guess we ought to give the president and the speaker some space, but I do think the sooner they get to the bottom line, and if they need folks to float some ideas and take the first round of arrows, I'm willing to do that. I know others are. I got a lot of Republican colleagues who do the same. But my hope is that we will get to a white smoke of an agreement sooner than later.
Okay, I got to get at least one political question in for you. I know you decided not to run for governor. Do you have complete confidence in Terry McAuliffe as the Democratic nominee for this upcoming race?
Listen, I've known Terry for 30 years. He and I are good friends. You know, there'll be a time for me to support him, and I think probably the best time is to do that when we work together that's mutually beneficial to him. I probably don't think the middle of the Christmas season, the middle of the fiscal cliff is the right time, but listen, Terry and I have been good friends for an awful long time.
Okay. All right. Senator Warner, have a happy holiday if I don't talk to you, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, Ryan.